And now, how all this looks on Capitol Hill. Republican Senator Mike Rounds of South Dakota has read the FBI report. He read it earlier today, and he joins us now. Senator, what did you make of the FBI report? You perhaps have just heard from this former agent we've spoken with, and we're also hearing from Democrats who are criticizing the limits placed on the investigation.
Well, first of all, there were no new items. There was no shocker any place. There was lots more detail for us to listen to with regard to the explanations made by individuals, but nothing that shocked anybody, no new revelations, confirmation of what had already been said or discussed within the public's review during the hearings that came up. Basically, it confirmed what we'd already heard. But they did go through the process with a number of different witnesses who basically showed no collaboration with any of the allegations that had been made to begin with, and basically there was nothing new there that we hadn't basically heard about that had relevancy to the issues at hand.
So you weren't bothered that they placed limits on the people they could talk to?
Well, I think the question that had been raised was, why weren't we having the judge and also Professor Ford once again reviewed? But remember that in this case, as in all cases, the FBI will do an investigation on what they call 302, which is basic information asking about issues and the accusation specific. But both Professor Ford and Judge Kavanaugh went through literally hours and hours of testimony in front of the individuals who are the decision makers, which are the Judiciary Committee, and for all of us to listen to that testimony, which we not only were able to listen to once, but go back through and review again. And I suspect that what happened is they said, look, we've already gone through and we've had a chance to ask questions and double down with regard to the questions and concerns that senators had of each of these two individuals.
We know, Senator, that Dr. Blasey Ford contacted her member of Congress back in early July before Judge Kavanaugh had been named. She reached out when she thought he was just under consideration. She wanted to get the information across. Democrats are now conceding that it may not have been handled very well once the name was passed on to Congress, but their point is once that information was out there, isn't there an obligation to explore it fully?
We think it has been explored fully. And in fact, you are correct. It was not handled right. He had made the short list, and that's when apparently there had been contact made. If that data had been brought forward in a regular order, if it had been discussed among the committee like all of these traditionally are, that information could have been vetted in those 6 weeks in which it was hidden from basically the majority part of the committee. And on top of it, when it was leaked and she was not given the information by her own attorneys, apparently, that the committee would offer her a private discussion in California, and she says she didn't know anything about it. That really started, honestly, it made a lot of us think that there was some intent there that was not appropriate.
Senator.
And I think that still stands today.
Senator, excuse me, I want to read to you something that Judge Kavanaugh said as part of his opening statement last week before the Judiciary Committee. He said the accusations against him were part of an orchestrated political hit, fueled with apparent pent-up anger about President Trump and the 2016 election and revenge on behalf of the Clintons. Do you believe Dr. Blasey Ford was put up to this by Democrats who were out for revenge?
I think Professor Ford was probably not honored the way she should have been with her request by those individuals who saw political gain to begin with. And I think in listening to her, I felt very sorry for the position that she had been put in. But I also think you saw something else here, and I read it this way, because I watched very carefully as he expressed the real frustration that I think a lot of us in his position would have. What you saw was a man who was going to call balls and strikes. You know, we talked about him and his judicial temperament to begin with and said he's going to be a straight shooter, he's going to lay it out. And what you found was a man who didn't hide his feelings. He said, look, you just threw 4 balls by me. One of them, this one here, you're throwing at my head. And he called it just exactly the way that he saw it. And so he expressed the frustration and the anger that I think was just. And for Professor Ford, this could have been done in a private setting. It was offered. She never got that information because somebody didn't deliver it to her. And it wasn't the folks who were responsible for operating the committee that didn't do that.
Senator, I hear you. Just finally, very quickly, former Justice John Paul Stevens in an interview today said he once thought Brett Kavanaugh did have the qualifications to serve on the court based on his record, but he said watching him in the hearings changed his mind. He said senators should pay attention to that.
Well, I think a lot of us did, and that's part of the responsibility that we have is to, and we were there, we watched it, but there's something else as well, and that is we still have 300 cases that Judge Kavanaugh has issued rulings on that we can go back and look at. It shows a lot about judicial determination, judicial judgment. It's been well respected over an extended period of time. And what you're finding right now is a man who has been attacked, his family has been attacked, he's been through a process that literally, I think when it's all said and done, I think he's going to have a huge respect for the value of someone who is innocent to have the right to be innocent until such time as he is proven guilty. And if nothing else, I think that has been seared into his mind for forevermore if it wasn't there already.
Senator Mike Rounds, thank you very much.
Thank you.